We're going to start with straight content. Where my straights at? We got any straights out there? We're going into Strait of Hormuz content to be more specific. Um, we're going to listen. We're going to watch the CNN video because since the last time that we talked, I guess Iran has agreed to completely open the Strait of Hormuz, according to CNN at least. I don't really know a whole lot about this story. I didn't have a lot of time today to like watch news on my own, like on the side. While I was weeding and stuff, I was just reading or I was listening to a book. So I'm going to be learning this just as you guys are. But I'm guessing it's potentially tied to Trump's decision to rein in Israel and get Israel to agree to a temporary ceasefire. At least that's what this Chiron is making me believe. So let's go ahead and watch this. This is Iran says Strait of Hormuz completely open by CNN. Yeah, let's see what's going on.
Foreign Minister on X says that the Strait of Hormuz is open for all commercial vessels. We're just learning this right now. Let me read where we are getting this from X. The foreign minister saying, in line with the ceasefire in Lebanon, the passage for all commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz is declared completely open for the remaining period of the ceasefire on coordinated routes as already announced by ports and maritime organizations of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But this is a huge announcement coming.
Okay, that's interesting. The way that was worded was interesting. Number one, like I was guessing, it was tied to, America putting pressure on Israel to stop their genocidal bombing campaign in Beirut. Now, that doesn't mean that there even is really a ceasefire, I would say, in Lebanon, because Israel is still, occupying southern Lebanon, or at least portions of it right now. I don't know if Hezbollah is still in the process of, trying to push them out, or if Hezbollah is also, taking a step back. I'm guessing that if Israel continues trying to acquire more territory, Hezbollah will just keep fighting, and I don't know. We'll see if that's like a real ceasefire or not. But that is, I guess, what Iran is saying this action or this statement is for. The other thing that caught my eye or caught my ear with that is that last part. Let me see if I can listen to her say it again.
For the remaining period of the ceasefire on coordinated routes as already announced by ports and maritime organizations of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But this is...
It's kind of funny how she tried to almost mumble that last part, which was interesting. I don't know. So that makes it sound like it's kind of a maybe like a I don't really know what exactly is different about this than what was before, except maybe they're not going to charge tolls. But it seems like Iran is still saying that you need to, if you want to be safe and protected going through here, you need our authority. You need to notify the IRGC, and we will coordinate it and make it happen. So that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. It's kind of maybe a little bit of a gesture of goodwill to America, to if they are actually getting rid of the whole tolling system, and they're outright saying that they're going to that it's going to be completely open, which obviously is going to do a number on the stock market and stuff on this Friday. Good timing, I guess. I don't know. It's really strange. I don't know a whole lot what to make of this, except that the whole blockade thing was a little silly in the first place. I don't know if that's still on now that this has happened. I guess I'll just keep watching the video and we'll see what they say.
Is a huge announcement coming from the Iranian foreign minister about what has become a central part of the negotiation, getting the Strait of Hormuz open and safely. And so we're going to bring you much more as we get this in, literally coming in as we're talking about. As we are getting this, we also have a new report that claims the United States is also considering a $20 billion deal that would help to end the conflict. This is a report from Axios, co-written also by CNN political and global affairs analyst Barak Ravid. Let me read a quote from this reporting now coming in. The U.S. and Iran are negotiating over a 3-page plan to end the war, with one element under discussion being that the U.S. would release $20 billion in frozen Iranian funds in return for Iran giving up its stockpile of enriched uranium. This according to 2 U.S. officials and 2 additional sources briefed. on the talks?
Okay, that's interesting as well. Given the sources that this is coming from, I'm guessing this was given straight to them by the State Department. So this is what the State Department is like trying to get across to the public. So what's actually probably happening is, I'm guessing, a little bit different behind the scenes. I think that the one thing that I think that they had negotiating like potential to actually get a deal with Iran with is around nuclear enrichment. I would say that they would try to get like something similar to the JCPOA. Like Iran would probably be willing potentially to go with something similar to the JCPOA. That's assuming that they're not like full on, black-pilled, like we got to get a nuke as soon as possible. And maybe they would agree to it and still pursue a nuke. I don't really know, to be honest. This seems a little too good to be true from America's perspective, though, in terms of getting like all of the uranium. I would guess that that's not going to happen. They're going to keep some level of uranium for civil purposes, like they always have. And also, this completely ignores the other things that Iran asked for, namely complete and total, like they're not saying anything about a complete end to hostilities, both in Iran and Lebanon. They're not talking about the U.S. bases in the region. They're not talking about what else was there? The tolling system that they wanted to set up. So it like I don't really know what the actual agreement is going to look like, but I'm going to guess that there's going to be a lot more to the deal than just the nuclear enrichment portion, if there is going to be any deal at all. And also, remember what I said before, when you see some sort of breakthrough coming through when it comes to America, that usually is like afterwards ends up with bombing. And we're also on a Friday, we're also on a Friday, which means now or tomorrow is the likely days of reinitiating bombing from America's perspective. That would be weird right after Iran like said it's going to be open, unless they're doing some like, more insider stock trading or something. I don't know. But like I usually say, everybody out there, go pray to the markets, do your market rain dances, and try to pray to the markets that we do not restart the hot war with Iran over the weekend. And if the markets are pleased with your prayers, then the markets will grant us peace over the weekend, over this, the dark nights of the market being closed. So that's what I am asking all of my viewers to do, is go pray to the markets, please.
A lot of breaking news here. Let's get to Nick Robertson. He's in Islamabad on this breaking news first. Nick, what do you make of it?
Look, it seems to me we're getting some positive breakthroughs. The fact that the Iranian foreign minister has said the Strait of Hormuz is open to all commercial vessels really seems to indicate that the talks that the Pakistani mediators are having, and they're going into their third day of talks in Tehran right now, are beginning to bear some fruit. Sources I've been speaking to involved in all of this are sounding and looking very positive about where the talks are at the moment. Of course, I'm not getting an indication of what other hurdles there may be to overcome, but it has been one of the things that Iran has wanted, one of those points. They want assets unfrozen. They want to see sanctions lifted. They want money for war rations and damages. We've been talking here about billions upon billions of dollars. Last weekend at the talks, the Iranians said they'd asked the United States for $8 billion in unfrozen assets at the time in the talks last Saturday.
Is this like freezing or glitching for everybody else, or is that just me?
And the Sunday, the White House knocked down the suggestion Iran was going to get that. But it's always been part of Iran's core demands. Iran's now lifted, it seems, their own blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. Is that in exchange for money? Are they expecting the money to come? But what the Iranian foreign minister has said, and I think this is very, very telling, and we were talking about this just yesterday, that the reason that the Iranians have lifted their blockade on the Strait of Hormuz for the remaining duration of the ceasefire, probably as the US-Iran ceasefire, which has about 5 days to run. He said this is because that there is a ceasefire in Lebanon. These things have been inextricably linked in the Iranian mind. So while the Pakistani lead negotiator.
Well, and in reality as well. This we shouldn't disconnect what's happening now with America, Israel, and Iran from, you know, the origins of this, which was Gaza, right? If Israel didn't commit genocide in Gaza, then we wouldn't likely be in this situation that we're in right now. So, as per usual, everything leads back to Israel when it comes to destabilization in the Middle East. So
negotiating team has been in Tehran talking. But of course,
that's exactly why it's very important that Lebanon is a part of the ceasefire deal. And in fact, it should be all fronts. And if you don't want this to keep happening in the future, you would also probably want to include a settlement on Gaza, like in terms of, you know, full withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza, full withdrawal of all settlers from the West Bank. Like all of these things are going to be necessary if you want actual long-lasting peace. Now, I don't know. I doubt any of that's going to happen as a part of this particular iteration of conflict. But until those things happen, there will never be peace in the Middle East. Until, I guess I would say until, you know, the Palestinians are allowed to live with dignity and are not subjugated to apartheid violence by their settler colonial occupiers, then this sort of destabilization is just going to be continuous and ever present indefinitely.
Lebanon deal came through yesterday. We were saying that that was going to aid and benefit the talks in Tehran, and it does seem to be the case. Now, what remain the sticking points? The nuclear issue, that enriched uranium, Iran's commitment and desire for a nuclear bomb, that's always been at the core of US demands. That's what President Trump was saying yesterday. He said Iran had forsworn that it wasn't going to have a nuclear weapon. He also said Iran had agreed to hand over the nuclear dust. We don't have details on that yet. But these moves at the moment sound like that Iran is softening. It sounds like a deal gets closer into.
Well, it sounds like the State Department is trying to project some sort of victory, is what it sounds like to me. I don't know. That's how I interpret this. Like I said, with the sources that came forward, this feels like something that was just leaked straight to them from the State Department. So this is clearly what America wants people to be focused on. They want America to be focused on this nuclear aspect, which was always the most malleable aspect in terms of negotiating with Iran, the one that Iran would be willing to, you know, at least go back down to like 20% enrichment or whatever, like they were under the JCPOA, potentially. I'm saying all this like hypothetically because we don't really know exactly what the new leadership in Iran will want to do. I'm kind of talking about what the old leadership of Iran would have wanted to do, which was negotiate for a similar agreement to the JCPOA, down to 20% enrichment. The new leadership, I have no idea. They may want like to just race for a nuke as soon as possible. They are much more hardline. So, but I would say that regardless, though, that aspect of the deal was always the most likely to have some sort of wiggle room when it came to Iran allowing a quote unquote win from the America, or like a rhetorical win for the Americans.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, on the other side of the screen, we're looking at right along with you is we're seeing, looking at oil prices right now dropping over 9%, Brent crude as well as WTI standard in the States. Oil markets reacting understandably to this news coming in. There's a lot to digest here. Nick Roberts.
I think they're reacting a little too soon. First of all, the ceasefire is only for another 5 days. So the bombs will be flying again after that. The strait will be closed again after that. If it starts up in a hot war, or if it starts up in a hot war tonight, I don't know when it's going to happen, if it happens, but the insurance costs are probably still going to be through the roof. So we don't know if ships are actually even still going to take up this offer of it being open or not. That's another thing as well.
We'll tracking all these developments in Islamabad for us. Let's get over to the White House now. Elena Treen is there as well. A lot of elements here, Elena. You've got the announcement coming from the Iranian foreign minister about the strait. You've got this reporting from Barak Ravid of Axios about a $20 billion in frozen Iranian funds that could be part of the discussion. something talking about frozen funds being handed over, something President Trump has been highly critical of the previous nuclear deal in the past. What are you hearing from there right now?
I think 1.7 billion was the amount of like relieved, like essentially giving Iran back the money that we stole from them, right? Under the JCPOA, I think it was 1.7 billion. So if it is 20 billion, it's still probably not enough. I mean, it is their money. Like, you know what I'm saying? They should technically be able to have all of it, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see if this actually amounts to anything. It still seems like if what they're just saying right now is what it is, is what the actual deal is going to be. That does not reflect the realities on the ground in terms of the battlefield. So that's why I'm a little bit skeptical. The realities on the ground are that Iran could outlast us for sure in a prolonged conflict. And so it would be obviously terrible for them in terms of their civilians, but afterwards they would, America would be forced to give much more concessions. So that's why I'm a little bit skeptical of all of this actually, like this, State Department approved, thing that's happening, negotiation that's happening. I'm just very highly skeptical of it.
Yeah, highly critical is definitely right. I'd remind you that under the Obama administration, when you had that Iranian nuclear deal, they had handed over $400 million in cash to the Iranians during that agreement. But look, from everything that Nick laid out and that Axios report, it is lining up with the conversations.
Maybe that included sanctions relief. I'm not sure, but I've heard the number 1.7 billion.
That I am having, which is that there is a lot of optimism right now in that building behind me, Kate, about where things stand around a potential deal. Now, I don't want to be, too optimistic. You hear a lot of this talk among Trump administration officials about how positive they are. There are, of course, still sticking points that remain, as Nick laid out, this idea of the length of time that the Iranians would agree to suspend their enrichment of uranium, and also a deal on having the U.S. or some sort of country going in and retrieving the nuclear material still in Tehran's possession. But they are hopeful that they are getting to a place now where really an agreement is in sight. And I know from the conversations I've been having that Trump administration officials are really working toward and hoping that a potential second round of these talks, of this meeting, could happen in person between the U.S. and Iranians as early as this weekend. Again, things are very fluid, so we have to see what happens today. But today is also a very important day because we know that the Pakistanis have been meeting with Iranian officials in Tehran. The Pakistanis, of course, the key intermediary here between Washington and Tehran. The Pakistanis have been in touch with top Trump administration officials throughout this process. And so really, the goal of those talks in Tehran are to try and get the Iranians to a level of significant compromise where, again, the contours of a potential agreement really could be reached. And that is the goal they're working toward. I'd remind you the ceasefire, the 2-week ceasefire, expires on Tuesday, April 21st. And there's been, there had been talk earlier this week of a possible extension. But from the conversations I've had, Kate, with White House officials, is they want to try and formulate some sort of deal before the ceasefire ends. A very ambitious goal, but it does seem, as today with this latest news about the Iranians reopening the strait thanks to that ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, that they are actually moving closer to that goal. And just to go back to that ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon,
yeah, it's weird. They do, like, that is a movement closer to, I guess, the goal, but really it's just implementing the original ceasefire deal, which was that it included Lebanon. Israel decided they didn't want it to include Lebanon, so they just ignored that part. And then Iran said, okay, well then the Strait of Hormuz isn't going to be completely opened, I think that was kind of what happened there. In some ways they're getting closer, but also I'm still highly skeptical just because we're sending so many more troops out there right now as well, which usually precedes an actual, a restarting of like active hot war. So Usually, like I said, I'm 60. I'm like 60-40 in terms of there. It'll probably start up a new hot war will probably start up again, but it could not. I mean, it could. Maybe this is all for real this time, but um, that's kind of my thoughts at least.
Of course, President Trump announced yesterday, I am told that that had a positive effect on some of the talks that are going, of course, between the U.S. and Iran through the Pakistanis on a broader agreement. And so a lot of different developments today that we are learning of. We have to see, I think, these negotiations are continuing. I think a lot of these reports we have to be careful with because things are fluid. These negotiations are not over. An agreement has not been reached. But that's certainly, I think, adding to the level of optimism that this Trump administration feels today as we move into the weekend.
Yeah, there is movement. There is breaking news on this front in this moment that clearly is getting reaction all over the world already. Elena, thank you very much. John?
Well, so interesting there, if we can keep those numbers up for just a second. Huge drops in oil prices of more than 10%. That's just this morning.
A little bit too huge, if you ask me, given the actual current situation we're in. They're putting a lot of man, it feels like the more financialized our economy becomes, or the more bubble, inflated bubble our economy becomes, it feels like the more people just hang on to even the slightest hint of things can go back to normal, and then pretend in their head that, okay, this means we're actually going back to normal this time. We can all, everybody, the markets can now move again. We can all our hopes and dreams are going to come true. And then they usually end up crashing back down to reality pretty soon after. But yeah, we'll see what happens with as the ceasefire comes to a close, if these negotiations are real or not.
The stock market, an impressive positive opening, but to a certain extent, I think the stock market has already taken into account that a deal or progress was likely between the United States and Iran. But those drops in the oil prices, and let's just keep those numbers up. You don't see movements like that almost ever. Now 11 points down just in the last 10, 20 minutes. We do have a new Trump Truth Social post here.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm just going to read this to you. This literally just
it.
happened a few seconds ago. Donald Trump posting this. The Strait of Hormuz is completely open and ready for business and full passage, but the naval blockade will remain in full force and effect as it pertains to Iran only until such time as our transaction with Iran is 100% complete. This process should go very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like he's just saying that. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's really hard to tell because our president lies all the time. It seems like he's just taking advantage of the ceasefire to do an escalation without Iran responding. Because Iran is going to not respond during the ceasefire. There will be escalations there's obviously escalations Iran could do to, if they're being blockaded, then they could just, hit all of the ships going through and just close it again entirely. You know what? But they're not going to do that during the ceasefire if they're negotiating in good faith. So who knows? We'll see. We'll see. Like I said before, though, pray to the markets, people. We must all do our parts and pray to the markets that we do not start up a hot war over these dark nights of the weekend until the markets open again, until the markets wake up again on Monday to protect us.